Glow and texturing are two of the finishing touches I always add to basically any design work you see from me. And so in this video, I'm going to show you using this post just a breakdown of not only this design, but my process for glow, texturing, this dither effect, the 3D work, the 3D logo, and I'm just going to break down how I put this design together. So it's not necessarily going to be like an in detail tutorial, but I'm just going to go through everything I did that landed me this poster design and show you a few of the tricks that you might not be aware of that I'm doing here to get some of these effects. If you're new around here, I created this poster to promote or just share some software that I've been working on this year called Dithering. This software came out in February and we've been working on it ever since, adding loads of new updates and stuff. So when I made this poster, it was just basically to promote version 4 update, which I will show in this video as well. But if you want to learn more about Dithering or about what this poster was actually being designed for, then I will leave links to Dithering underneath this video. I'm also going to use Dithering in the video, so if you've already got Dithering, then you can copy some of the stuff I do from there. But to get started straight away, I've got the PSD file open here. This is the untextured and without glow version. So obviously if I show the actual version on screen at the beginning, you'll see like there's quite a lot that happens between finishing the design and actually getting the textured, glowing sort of hopefully retro look out of the visual that I create here. But just to reduce this down to where I started, I actually started in Adobe Illustrator, where I've got open my logo, the Studio AAA logo here, just as a flat vector, just as a path. And what I did was I had to make this 3D so I could take it into Blender. So I just went to Window and take 3D materials to get this little panel here. And I just added an inflate. So if I select the logo and inflate it and then inflate both sides, you'll be able to see that that made this 3D. So once I'd done that, I took it into Blender here, where obviously I've already got stuff set up because this isn't a Blender tutorial. I don't have time to do a whole Blender tutorial. I did squish the logo a little bit, so it's actually probably more like this in Adobe Illustrator, but I squished it down a little bit. And I also imported from DAZ 3D, which is a software that I don't have installed on this computer. I did when I created this poster. I imported a human, so I won't zoom out too far because then my video might get whatever happens if I show the lower half of this person's body. But yeah, I just put the logo in the mouth, and then this version here, you can see where the camera is set up and stuff with the light and everything. I exported this. I think what I probably did was some more tweaks to like the shadow and stuff, because the shadow is a little bit much here. But yeah, I exported this. All I've done to the logo is just add a little bit of emission, just with this sort of light orangey, light red sort of tint to it. So I get that export and then I take that into Dithering. So here I've got Dithering open. As you can see, I've stretched out some of the teeth before I created this asset as well. But all I added here was, I believe, an Ostromakov dither with the crystalline palette. And then if you just reduce the contrast down after upping the depth, you can start to isolate the logo and the teeth into the same color, while the face gets this sort of off gray, which is important for later for when we add the glow. So when I talk about dithering, I often end up just talking about luminance and why luminance matters so much and how luminance determines all of the patterns and stuff that you get from dithering. So here, with this palette, crystalline, I don't even know how you're supposed to pronounce it, even though I named it that. When you're setting up the depth, I only go to 5 here so that these cheek sections are not fully black, because if they're fully black, when I go to add in glow and texturing later on, they will be treated in the same way the background is, which is not what I want. I still want them to be there so you can see sort of the contours of the face. So anyway, I deliberately didn't go all the way out with this palette with the depth here, all the way to like 8 or whatever, with more contrast and stuff like that, just because I wanted to preserve these like gray sections. So it's kind of something like this that I ended up with. You don't have to go for a Ostromakov if you were to recreate this. Probably any of the error diffusion algorithms will work, but low contrast, crystalline, however you say it. If you want to get some more palettes similar to that, if you go into extras and go to color palettes, I believe that on the website, there is a crystalline expanded pack of palettes that, again, I don't have installed on this PC yet, but you can get some very similar color palettes to this one that I'm using, just because this one is particularly useful. And I just exported that. I think I just did it to clipboard, and then I came into Photoshop. Now you might notice that the UI screenshot here is not the settings we just used, and it's not even the palette we just used either, because I just used a random screenshot that I had of the Dithering UI, and I just cropped out the design section and I removed the file name from the top, added in a shape to get rid of the background lightning, and then just masked this in. So speaking of the lightning, there are two lightning layers here. I did the lightning stuff because I was not going to upload any of this till like start of October, which is probably now when you'll see this. But I ended up uploading it sooner just because I needed something to upload, basically. And because we're probably doing a Halloween update of Dithering as well, which means that like this would be outdated by then anyway. So if I remove both of the lightning layers here, these are from an asset pack on my site. But what I will do is I will drop some lightning assets in the Dithering Discord server. So if you're someone who maybe has already got the full asset pack of lightning from my site, then great. But if you just go to extras again and go to Discord, look at the updates channel here. I always post the tutorials and stuff here. I'll drop some lightning JPEGs in there for you if you wanted to just try and recreate this. I know there's sometimes a bit of a wait to get in the Discord, and it's because we get it just fill up with spam and bots like it is now, and I've got to manually reject those people. But yeah, I'll make sure there are some lightning assets that you can use there, but there is a full pack of lightning assets on my site too. So I included one in the background up near the top because I know that I'm going to be adding glow to this later on, and I don't want this lightning to be sort of webbing out behind my text, because when I add the glow later on, I know that that's going to sort of make this text just unreadable, just like not legible anymore. So I deliberately heavily weight the lightning to the top section of the image here, and then to actually make it look as though the lightning is interfacing with the software that I'm showing here, I added in another lightning asset but with some masking. So if I alt and click the mask, it'll show me what I masked out, and if I shift click, it'll just hide the stuff I masked out. So obviously I got this hard edge on the right, so I've rotated it and then just drawn like this over the text, over the top and the top right, where I think the lightning's already there, so we don't really need it there. If you're doing similar stuff like this, all you need to do is just get like a soft brush, so make sure your hardness on your brush is all the way down. If I just delete that layer mask, come here to the rectangle with a circle in it on your layer, and then you can start drawing with a black brush, a little bit bigger than that, to mask out sections. And then if you alt and click on your layer mask, basically areas in white will be allowed through, and then areas in grey where it's fading, like they'll fade out. The opacity will gradually move down to black, where the pixels from your original layer will no longer be visible, basically. And then all I've done as well is just remove the link from the mask and the lightning layer so that I can like move things around a little bit more freely. So the other thing, just like design wise, that I always try to do with my posters, I'll try and show some examples on screen of other times I've done this, is symmetry. So the text layers here at the bottom, they are center aligned with paragraph. There is no like one line that's obviously way longer that makes it sort of pyramid shaped either way. Short line, long line, short line for the main text, and then closing it off at the bottom, long line, short line, logo. So really the text creates this shape through the symmetry that's like expanding out at the bottom and then coming back in at the top, and then it sort of frames the UI that I've got there. And then the only time that this symmetry is broken is to show the UI in the screenshot of Dithering, and obviously the lightning as well, because symmetrical lightning would look silly. But obviously my logo is fully symmetrical. I like symmetry. And the blender work is symmetrical as well. The middle A lines up with the middle of the teeth. And when I've warped the teeth here, I've done them on the same teeth, and I've probably mirrored my liquify or whatever I've done that with as well. So when you set up like symmetry and stuff and then you break the rule, it should be done to draw attention, or like it should be done with a reason. So the reason here that the symmetry gets broken is to make you look at the UI, hopefully. I didn't really spend like a massive amount of time on this poster, so it's not like that's something that's super well thought out, but it's something that I generally try to do in all of my posters and work with like typography and images and stuff. Here's an example: symmetry. This is another one where I did symmetry, and then another one where I did some symmetry as well. But anyway, yeah, that's something I like to do. It's something that helps me get the structure just laid down so I can focus on the more creative part, which is what I'm about to show you. So layout here is cool. Got the lightning done. Dithering is in there. UI is in. The text reads what I want it to read. It's all laid out how I want it to be. So next we're going to start adding glow. So rather than like doing the whole highlight all your layers and convert them to a smart object or whatever, I generally just save a copy of the whole PSD and then drag that in and start working on that. So if I go and hide all my work so far here, including the lightning and everything, and enable my glow setup, you'll see this really overpowered, really overly blurry, soft, kind of more saturated version of what I just saved in here with no blending or anything. And then sort of a doubled up version of that set to screen with, again, just more layer masking to make it just like appear more natural, rather than, if you don't know, the word Gaussian in Gaussian blur means normal. Oh, it's got really dark in here all of a sudden. Okay, hopefully that doesn't mess up my recording. Anyway, the word Gaussian in Gaussian blur means normal. And in 3D and in other, like if you've just used Photoshop, you might not have heard the term normal or normals before in the right context. Obviously, you know what the word normal means, but it just, like, it's called Gaussian blur because it is just blurring your work equally across all dimensions, up, left to right, diagonally, whatever angle you might select. If you had a 360-degree thing, the blur is like unbiased. It's going to blur your whatever you put through a Gaussian blur or a Gaussian anything. We even got Gaussian dithering in Ditherboy. So if I go to Gaussian dither, it's diffusing your work here equally across all dimensions. It doesn't have any kind of bias. If I turn up the distribution spread, you can see it's just spreading out this dither across the work in a very unbiased way. It's not really reacting that much to anything other than the luminosity and the depth, really. Whereas if you go to something that we've made, just to move this away from blurs, like modulated diffuse Y, this is only on the Y axis. Astromakov will have patterns that it prefers and wants to recreate, as will Bayer ordered and, you know, all these others. So same applies with blurs. So if you get something like this, go to filter, blur, motion blur. Obviously, this is no longer Gaussian because it is just blurring your work across this angle, whereas a Gaussian blur is doing it on literally every angle in the same way. So the reason I mention that is just because if you're doing something with a Gaussian operation, with a normal operation, an unbiased thing that you're applying to anything, it's good to go and do something like this just to make it appear more natural, because like the light on these walls, and I don't know, like in life, in the real world, if you're trying to emulate real effects or real hardware or something that isn't just a filter gallery, like if you want to do things in like an educated way, it's good to try and give them the appearance of like some, not randomness necessarily, but some unpredictability. So yeah, I know that's a very long roundabout way of explaining that I got a white brush here and sort of just painted in some dots, and then I went to properties and I turned up the feathering. So if you turn down the feathering, this is what I drew. I just clicked there, and then I did a couple here too. Then I turned the feathering up to make it sort of spread out a little bit more, look a little bit nicer. So that's kind of how I set up my glow. Doubling up with Gaussian blurs, making sure you doing like this like subtle curves adjustment just to make things a little bit more intense, upping the saturation a little bit, adding Gaussian blur. And then you can always change the Gaussian blur blend mode to screen if you want. Obviously, a couple of times in previous videos, I've also shown the Deep Glow plugin in After Effects, which always looks great too. But before I go and combine this with the textures, I'm just going to hide that and bring back my original design here, and then we'll go over textures. So texturing, there's a million texturing tutorials online. Honestly, I think that the way most people do texturing is a bit much. I don't think that, in fact, I've got a big stack of prints there. Obviously, I just opened this office recently, so I'll show you a real world example. Okay, so I've got some packaging and some stuff here. So we're not doing ink bleed. We're not doing stupid overpowered texturing. We're not doing texturing that overpowers the work we've just put into our structure in the image and the symmetry and stuff. We're not bringing any textures in here that are going to add shapes or splatters or, like I said, ink bleed and stuff. This is a zine by my friend and basically like Studio AAA, not employee, I don't know. We do work together every month now on Do The Boy. Christos.jpg. If you follow this channel for a while, you've definitely seen some of his work. So this is his work printed out onto nice paper, and there's like some dithering and stuff in here as well. And I'll maybe just have to take some actual photos of these. But if you look, the texture has been removed for it to go to print, and there is no ink bleed. There's no stupid overpowered displacement map added to this to make it look printed. When you print something, it doesn't get displaced. This is an artwork by my friend known as Outlining, who you might know on Twitter. I've smudged this coming in, so sorry about that. But again, the texture is from the actual paper here, and there's no stupid ink bleed. There's no like noisy, disruptive patterns coming through. If you want to make something look printed, you don't have to go and do all this crazy stuff I think people often do with their texturing in Photoshop. This is some work by my friend Caroline, and in fact the texturing like method I'm about to show you here is one that she also uses on her work. But again, she's removed the texture for this print because it's going to be printed on paper, and so we don't need any silly shapes coming through with the textures. We don't need to go and do any crazy displacement or adding drop shadows to your highlights for ink bleed and blah, blah, blah. All that stuff is overpowering. And I'm guilty of this too in the past, but if you are relying on that stuff, then it maybe means the fundamental parts of your design actually just need some more time and attention and intention. If you are finding that your work might rely on the texturing process rather than using the texturing process as a final touch, cherry on top kind of thing. So also got some packaging here again for the medieval synthesizer thing I bought, not synthesizer, sampler, which is there, which is very cool. But again, they don't do any stupid like ink bleed or overpowering stuff here. Textures exist in the real world. They're just not they're not the main event. They're a supporting component on the design that makes it feel nice. They're not the main part. So anyway, that's like the approach that I think that you should have with texturing. So back to luminosity I spoke about before, and blend modes and textures and stuff. So you only need 2 textures at most for an image. Obviously you can take it further, but you only need 2 in my opinion. Just a dark texture for a screen or a lighten blend mode. These blend mode operations, just mathematical equations basically on all the pixels in your image that compare this texture that I've got here, which is a texture from a pack on my site called Photocopied. Again, I will drop a couple in the Discord if you just want to follow along without having to, invest in a whole pack of textures. But by using lighten or screen, Photoshop is just comparing the pixels in this image to the pixels below it. And when the pixel in the texture is lighter than the pixel below it, then it will blend the texture in, as in it will just replace the pixel below it with the textured pixel. So if we zoom in on the text is completely untextured. There's nothing coming through on that. And that's because obviously the pixels here are not brighter than the pixels in the text. So that's as simple as it is really for your dark texture. So all I've done there is added screen and turn the blend mode down until I'm happy that it's not taking up too much attention, basically. So that was between 30 and 40%. Then we add below the dark texture, a light texture. Now I rasterized this at the time, but I believe this is a texture from, again, from my site called Paper Pack, which is one I made in like 2020, so ages ago. But we've all got paper textures on our hard drive, so you can just bring in any white texture here. And we're going to go with one of the darken blend mode categories. So again, where lighten compares and replaces pixels based on if the pixel in the texture is lighter than the pixels below it, darken does the opposite. So these are all, this category is the darken blend modes. Some of these are a bit more harsh. I once did a video covering every blend mode where I probably could have told you exactly what linear burn does differently to darken or multiply. But depending on the work you're doing and how far you went with the glow, you might want to go for darken or one of these more harsh ones. So I've gone for linear burn here, and I've left this at 100%. So we've really, really dimmed down the artwork now. But in return, we get the texture coming through into the lettering, into these highlights in the dithering. We get it coming through into even the lightning and like the sort of baked in glow that comes off the lightning and all this like lovely chromatic aberration that's on the lighting as well. So in exchange for a much, much dimmer image, we're getting the texture come through. Now, I did just say about not going too far with texturing. This is too far with texturing, but because we're going to add a glow, and I've already set up the glow, it doesn't matter that we dimmed it too much because we're going to get some of that back, and that will then reduce the unrealistic dimming from this texture, basically. So if I now enable the glow setup that I had before, like this, you can see now the trade-off that we get. If I disable this one where I've used the lighter texture of linear burn, the trade-off that we get is, for example, this section here is much more realistically textured now. Even though without the glow setup, it's incredibly dim and looks unrealistic. Because we've brought in the glow underneath the texturing, it comes back. And same thing on the lettering and anywhere else that was too bright to be affected by the dark texture. Now, I've gone quite blue with this, and whenever you go too far with one color, it's good to offset it with another color unless you're being really intentional about color. And if I just Google color opposites, you'll find a load of these like color wheel graphics. But I'm in blue, and the opposite complementary shade is going to be one of these oranges. If you went for green, you maybe go for like a pinky red, whatever. You can use this if you want to, just color theory basically. All I've done here is go to layer, new fill layer, solid color, and then just to start with, if I just leave it a blue to start with so you can see the difference. Change the blend mode. Now we're going to go again into the darken category because we don't want to lighten, because when you lighten, the white pixels will remain. When you darken, the black pixels will remain. So obviously we've got a black background, so I'm going to go for a darken blend mode. In this case, multiply. So if we multiply blue in, it just gets even more blue. But if we use the color theory and go opposite, but be a little bit sort of more gentle with applying it, so like add a very desaturated version, kind of like this, which isn't too far off what I actually went for in the beginning, and then maybe just adjust the opacity a little bit. By doing that, you can just like equalize things and make it a little bit nicer to look at. And I always find when you've gone for blue and then you go for this sort of orangey, beigey overlay at the end, it sort of makes it look like a little bit retro and vintage in combination with the textures. So yeah, that's how I landed this. That's how I got here. I know that there are quite a few people who've got Ditherboy and are maybe like new to even design, or, you know, new to creating things digitally. And so while it might seem like, you know, Blender and all this stuff, like it might seem like I know these tools really well, I barely know Blender. I'm awful at Blender. My Blender skills are very, very rusty. This is very, very, very basic Blender stuff. And I only really did it because I have this like whole thing set up in this Blender document actually, where if I remove the mouth guy, I've got like these hands, and then you can put the logo in the hands. And I just like to do stuff with the logo. Like that's kind of why I started with Blender. So I've got like this one with the logo in one hand. And I don't know, it's just a cool thing to learn, but you don't need to know it inside out to get this type of thing out of Blender. If you want to start learning Blender, though, I can recommend people like Intranet Girl and Archfiend or Abel, who maybe you know about because he's posted about Ditherboy as well. And I'll leave some stuff linked below. But yeah, I know it seems like a lot of work to just get to this, but I kind of had all this stuff anyway. And if you are someone who has a brand or a logo or you know, a studio or anything like that, you probably have a thing you could swap out for Ditherboy here and a thing that you could swap out for my logo in the mouth that goes here. And then you could do your whole symmetry thing and texturing and glow and the color theory at the end and that kind of thing. So hopefully you learned something. Let me know if this type of breakdown video is useful, because obviously I didn't create this from scratch in front of you in this video, but I just went over how I did. And for me, that's a lot easier. I have a few other posters, like, I mean, I've got a whole backlog of work that I could do breakdown videos on if this is useful. Try not to make these into like a big advert for, oh, I used this paid thing and this paid thing and this paid thing. So if you've got Ditherboy, then I will make sure I drop some of these assets into the Ditherboy Discord, just because I appreciate if you've got Ditherboy, then you've got the main thing that we're working on already. You've got my main focus already, so I'll make sure you get some of this stuff to mess with. This is probably like the first Halloween-y themed video I'll upload of the year too, so more Halloween stuff coming. But yeah, thanks for watching. Let me know what you want to see next. Ditherboy Halloween update might be coming as well, so I'll do a video on that. And yeah, I'll see you in the next one.